Hi, my name is Lauren. So it's been a little while since I've released a video. I had a dream last night and I felt an urgent pressing to release this today. So I'm just going to go for it. I don't even think I'm really going to have time to edit this video, so please bear with me if there are any hiccups. Um, but yeah, I had this amazing dream last night, and when I woke up, as as soon as I was like awake enough to process the fact that I had a dream, I started praying about it, and God sort of interrupted me and told me to like get out of bed and go write it down. Um, I to be honest, I write down all my dreams. So, but sometimes I'm more lazy about getting out of bed right away to write them down. I don't always have prophetic dreams. In fact, most of my dreams are not prophetic. I can only name like a few that have had that I have known without a doubt that they were from God. Although I do think God speaks to us in our dreams and gives us guidance in our day to day life. But for what it's worth, there are certain dreams that I think have specific meaning and messages from Him. And this was one of them. So when you have a dream that you know is from God, like it has a different sort of resonance and weight to it, and you have this desire to understand it. But I think the Holy Spirit also speaks after the dream and gives you more revelation. I don't know that I have this dream entirely figured out, so please share with me your comments or thoughts about it in the comments. I honestly, I want to know more about like what the dream means. So, but I think some of it I do understand. So I'm just gonna go for it. So the early part of the dream was a little unclear um, as far as the context of how this revelation came about. But in the early part of the dream, there was a message or an understanding. I was given this message or understanding that my that two or more groups of people would be brought together uh, in the context of Christ and His church. So, like, I understood that this was a God revelation, even during the dream, that there would be two or more groups brought together um, in the context of the church. And in my dream, the message was it was that mine and my brother's friends and or multiple different families would be brought together. And so I have an older brother. We're the only two siblings, but I do have an older brother. So there is this idea of brothers and sisters in Christ. But I think it goes a little deeper than that, but I'll explain that later. So there was this message, somehow revelation, understanding, early part in the dream that two or more groups would be brought together. And then the dream sort of cuts, and I'm sure you've had dreams where it like cuts scenes. So that was the first part of the dream, but it's all consecutive, it's all related. Then my husband and I go to a store and we buy a plant. And this is fairly unusual for us because we don't have any plants in our apartment. We don't keep plants because we have cats, and cats tend to like eat plants and they're not good for the cats and blah, blah, blah. And also the cats just like won't leave them alone, and it's really annoying. So we never own we never own plants. But in the dream, my husband and I went to a store and we bought a little cactus in a pot. So it was just like a small pot with a cactus sticking up out of it. And it was, to be honest, a little ugly. It wasn't like a particularly pretty cactus. And I know, I don't know exactly what part how to explain how my revelations of what this was. During the dream, I didn't understand this. It was just a like kind of hump in the pot, like a little green hump of a cactus in the pot. And then like a paddle. I don't know if you're familiar with cactuses, but like a flat paddle. Um, and the thing was that when I took it home, that it grew so fast. Like it grew like almost like I was watching it grow, like with my bare eyes. I could see it growing. And almost like overnight, it grew to be about like 2 or 3 feet tall and had multiple arms. And then it also had this portion that had been in the dirt in the pot and then was being pushed up out of the pot. So it became like 2 or 3 feet tall. And it wasn't a particularly beautiful cactus. Some cactuses are very beautiful, but this one was like, it had kind of like weird arms and almost limbs. And like, I realized after the dream that it was a prickly pear, but I'll go more into that in a bit. Um, in the dream, this pot, I have this like very tiny cactus. It grows up super fast, almost while I'm watching it. And then I was just like shocked at how fast it grew. So that was the second part of the dream. And then the third part of the dream is a really short dream, to be honest. I'm standing on a sidewalk outside a building. And for context, I live in New York City, so there's no greenery in where I live. I don't live in any kind of area that has like a lot of plants and stuff. So it does make sense that I had this potted plant. But anyway, I digress. I was standing on the sidewalk outside of a building at nighttime, and it felt like Brooklyn. It did. I live in Brooklyn. I'm a visual artist. I live in Brooklyn. It felt like Brooklyn. And I'm standing on the sidewalk. And in the building next to me, there are multiple different meetings happening inside the building. And a girl is speaking to me on the sidewalk. She's standing in front of me and she's speaking to me. And she's kind of chastising me a little bit. Probably deserved. She says, "So you receive an important prophetic message from God and you are completely unfazed." And she says, "You're treating this very nonchalantly, like it happens every day." So I do feel like, I don't know, I didn't get angels can appear as everyday people. In my dream, she looked like a kind of normal everyday person, maybe even kind of like a doppelganger of myself, just like a normal girl. And I remember the message, and I'm thinking about the message that I got in the first part of the dream, the fact that several groups would be coming together in the context of the church. And I look at the building to my right, and I see there's something going on inside, and there is windows in the building, and on the second floor of the building I can see that there's some big meeting going on. It seems like almost like worship or some sort of like church meeting. And in the window, standing in the open window or next to an open window, there's a Hasidic man, so Hasidic Jewish man, and he's standing next to the window. He's like part of this group that's going on. But then I look down, and the doorway to this building, above the doorway to this building, it says iglesia, which is the Spanish word for church. It's related to our word ecclesia. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the Spanish wrong. I don't speak Spanish. But it's a very common thing in Brooklyn. You see these Spanish churches all over Brooklyn, and they always have signs in Spanish that will say like iglesia. It's not a particular denomination. It's just a Spanish word for church. So you do see different types of Spanish churches. Some of them are Pentecostal, some could be Baptist. It seems like there's a wide variety of different types of Spanish churches in Brooklyn. And so yeah, it's like there are meetings going on inside this building, multiple meetings. And there are people about. I do get the sense that there are other people about on the sidewalk. And the the sign above the door says Iglesia in Spanish. And I asked the girl, is this part of the group? Is this an example of the part of the groups coming together? And I don't think she answered me. She didn't give me an answer. But but I have a feeling that yes, it is, to maybe even to some degree symbolic, but it was an example of these of the answer to the prophecy and the or message in the first part of the dream. So yeah, so it's a very short dream. It's like the message, then I got the cactus, which sprung up overnight, and then I'm standing on the sidewalk and I see this worship. I'm assuming I'm assuming a little bit, but it seems like Hasidic people worshiping alongside Spanish speaking people. And if you are at all familiar with like Hasidic people in it, that is a very unlikely situation. But you know, God's amazing. God can do whatever he wants. And if he's speaking to this, I mean, I think it's incredible. So then I was sitting with this dream, and then I started doing a little praying about it and research. And I was praying and asking the Holy Spirit to guide me. And at first he gave me what I think was, I do believe this was from him, was from Joel. And let's see, I'll try to find it. Forgive me if I'm slow. I don't even know. I really honestly don't even really ever read Joel, so it's not like something I'm very familiar with. So I'm like, my Bible searching skills are failing me. 2:19. And there's the other verses about this dream that I'm going to share also, but this is just sort of the first kind of phase of me understanding this dream. Joel 2:19. The Lord will answer and say to his people, behold, I'm going to send you grain, new wine and oil, and you will be satisfied and full with them. And I will never again make you a reproach among the nations. But I will remove the northern army far from you, and I will drive it into a parched and desolate land, and its vanguard into the eastern sea, and its rear guard into the western sea. I'm going to skip down a bit. Verse 21, do not fear, O land, rejoice and be glad, for the Lord has done great things. Do not fear, beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness have turned green. For the tree has borne its fruit, the fig tree and the vine have yielded in full. So rejoice, O sons of Zion, and be glad in the Lord your God, for he has given you the early rain for your vindication, and he has poured down for you the rain, the early and latter rain, as before. The threshing floors will be full of grain, and the vats will overflow with new wine and oil. Then I will make up to you for the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the creeping locust, the stripping locust, and the gnawing locust, my great army which I sent among you. You will have plenty to eat and be satisfied. You will have plenty to eat and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. Then my people will never be put to shame. Thus you will know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and there is no other, and my people will never be put to shame. So yeah, that was the first part. It is this sort of that I'm not super familiar with this chapter, but it is about the new wine and the new oil that God's promising to send out, and his fulfillment of his promises. So I want to break down some other parts of the dream. And again, I just want to say, like, if you have any other revelations or thoughts about this dream, please share them. I'm honestly, I want to understand the dream more too. So I don't know that I have the full interpretation of this dream at the moment. And if I do get it, well, anyway, I haven't even shared the coolest part about this dream yet. So let's just go on. Okay, so the idea of brother and sister, we often use this term brother and sister in Christ, But I don't know exactly that's what this dream is about, because at the end of the dream, you have the Hasidic Jewish community and the Spanish speaking Christian community coming together. And I'm getting chills a little bit right now. Um, I think the brother and sister united by the same Father in heaven. I think that's what this symbolizes. We have two different branches, but the same root. And the Father in heaven is the root. And the great I am, Jesus called himself the I am. He is the root, the original root of the two branches of this communities of believers. And whether you don't have to, I mean, Hasidic Jews don't believe in Jesus, but they have the same root, which is the same God of Israel that we all believe in. So then I was looking at this and I came to Romans. And believe me, this is not even the coolest to me. I think this is not even the most shocking, coolest part. I'm going to get to it, which is about the cactus, but I'm going to get to it. Hold on. But I wanted to read this part in Romans because I feel like it's important. Here, I have it on my phone. Okay, so Romans 11. This whole chapter is about an explanation of the new believers' relationship to to the original Jewish people. You know, obviously, this was a message to the Gentiles and how they're supposed to think about the Jewish community now that the Gentiles have accepted Christ and the Jewish community hasn't accepted him yet. So this is Romans 11:7. I'm going to skip around a little bit in this chapter. Romans 11:7. What then? What Israel is seeking, it has not obtained, but those who were chosen obtained it, and the rest were hardened. Speaking of the Jews. And then skipping down to verse 16, it says, if the first piece of dough is holy, the lump is also, and if the root is holy, the branches are too. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive, were grafted in among them, and became partaker with them of the rich fruit of the olive tree, do not be arrogant toward the branches. But if you are arrogant, remember that it is not you who supports the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. Quite right, they were broken off for their unbelief, but you stand by your faith. Do not be conceited, but fear, for if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. So he's saying you're not any better than your Jewish brothers. You're part of the same plant. You're part of the same plant. You're just a different branch that's been grafted in, and you have to take into consideration the origins of the plant. And skipping down to verse 23, and he says, and they also, if they do not continue in their unbelief, will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. This is what I think the dream is about. I'm going to reread that. Romans 11:23. And they also, if they do not continue in their unbelief, will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut off from what is by nature a wild olive tree and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these who are the natural branches be grafted into their own olive tree? For I do not want you, brethren, to be uninformed of this mystery, so that you will not be wise in your own estimation, that a partial hardening has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, just as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove ungodliness from Jacob. This is my covenant with them, when I take away their sins. From the standpoint of the gospel, they are enemies for your sake, but from the standpoint of God's choice, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. So I think that's super cool. It's definitely talking about the Jewish, our Jewish brothers who are, we have the same father. So I think we have to still embrace them and still, think that remember, God says he can graft them in again. And I think that that is his desire, to bring them back into the full family of God. Um, yeah, anyway, it's really cool. But then this is what blew my mind. This is so cool. Okay, so then I was like picturing this plant. The plant was like a green, I'll try to put up an image. It was just like a green paddle sticking up out of a pot. And then I remembered, sorry, I'm a little slow. Um, so in 2022, my husband and I lived in New Mexico for a year. And I'm an artist, a visual artist, and I was given a grant and a residency to live in New Mexico for a year and live and work there. And in our house, we lived in the south eastern part of New Mexico, and in the backyard of our house there were tons of prickly pear, and I became very used to look to like these prickly pear, because when I first moved in there was this prickly pear plant that was like dying, and it really bothered me, and it's not nice to have a dead plant in your backyard. So I got a pair of kitchen tongs and I pulled off all the dead pieces of the prickly pear. Um, and I think I did a little research about how to handle this prickly pear, but I had like pulled off all the dead pieces, and the ironic thing is I pulled all the dead pieces off on Easter Sunday. That was like what I did that afternoon. Um, Pulled all the dead pieces off the prickly pear, and then over the next few months I was like shocked at how fast the prickly pear began to grow. And it those things grow really super fast, and if you live in an area that has these plants, you'll know that some people even consider them weeds because of how fast they grow and how fast they like propagate. But basically, like when you pull off what they have, these paddles, they're like, I don't know, they can be really big, but they're mostly like about like this big, like kind of oval shaped paddles. And if you pull off one of those paddles and just throw it on the ground, it will start to root. Eventually it might start to root, but the way that you really do it, and I actually did this to sort of help it spread in a pretty way, like around our patio, you take the paddle, and there's like the rounded part of the paddle, but then there's the part that had broken off the plant, and you take the paddle, don't touch it, but you take the paddle and you bury it halfway in the ground, so there's just like the green hump sticking up out of the soil, and then the part that had been broken off the plant starts to develop roots, and it will form a completely new plant. And these things grow super fast, like overnight. So I realized that, I during the dream I didn't know that's what the plant was, but when I woke up I realized that's what it was. It was a prickly pear, and it's a very personal reference for me because I really loved those prickly pears. I really I didn't love living in New Mexico, but I liked that plant, and I liked the nature aspect of living in New Mexico. So it seemed just like a very personal reference to me. When I first woke up, I was like, oh, that's cool that God's using this personal reference to this prickly pear. And then I just had this thought, like, well, I wonder if prickly pears grow in Israel. Well, I don't even think I had that thought. I didn't even go that far. I was like, oh, I wonder if cactuses grow in Israel. And then, sure enough, I Googled cactuses in Israel. And sure enough, guess what the national like fruit is of Israel? It's the prickly pear. Isn't that wild? Because these plants grow, um, they have, you can harvest these like little fruits. They're pretty. They're like purple little fruits. And the national fruit of Israel is prickly pear. How weird is that? Okay, it gets crazier. So I mean that's a cool reference. I had no clue that prickly pear grew in Israel. Um, there's more to it than that. Um, there's so many layers to this. So like, okay, I'm so excited. I don't even know how to start. Um, yeah, I talked about propagating the prickly pear. And they can also be grafted together. This is something weird about plant like cactuses and succulents. Like you can graft these things together because of the paddle of the prickly pear has like the full, it's a full plant on its own. It can become a full plant. So you can like graft, really easily graft onto another cactus. So that's why you might see in the stores sometimes weird cactus combinations. But anyway, that's kind of another thing. Um, so the prickly pear fruit is like a major crop in Israel, which I didn't know. And this term, they use the term sabra for the fruit. And this is actually also a term used for a Jewish person born in Israel. I did not know this. I learned this like an hour ago, like 2 hours ago. A sabra, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, but sabra is a term used for a Jew born in Israel. So I think the connotation is that they're tough on the outside, but sweet on the inside. So I thought that was really super cool. And then the other crazy thing about this is that where do prickly pears originate from? They originate from Mexico, and they also are really common in the Southwest. They originate from like you can find them in like Mexico, the Southwest, some of the southern U.S., and then also like the Caribbeans and the Bahamas. But primarily Mexico. And where, if we go back to my dream, in my dream there is a Hasidic man worshiping in the Spanish-speaking church here in New York City, in the Iglesia, the Spanish church. So there is a really large population of Spanish-speaking people here, Mexican people, Puerto Rican. The church I actually go to, or the church I've been going to for the past 4 to 5 months, is predominantly Puerto Rican and Spanish-speaking people. The church itself is in English, like the church service is in English, but occasionally like we'll have like a worship song in Spanish. So I'm pretty familiar with this. I live in Brooklyn. There are not all of the hipsters. You think of hipsters living in Brooklyn. All of these hipsters and like really super progressive families are not typically the ones going to church. Most of the churches that exist in New York are like Spanish-speaking population. So I just wanted to add in, I just realized there's a part of this that I didn't fully explain for those of you who don't live in New York. This I guess this is something particular to New York that if you don't live in New York, you might not fully understand how fascinating and amazing this dream is, to see like a Hasidic man worshiping alongside Spanish-speaking people. So the Hasidic community in New York is really big. There are probably, I would say like, I think I looked this up. It's estimated like around 200,000 Hasidic Jews living in New York. It's a very insular community. They don't really interact with people outside of their community. In fact, like I think a lot of them don't even speak English. I think, or if they do it, they don't speak it as as much as they speak Yiddish, most of the Hasidic community speaks Yiddish and probably Hebrew too, but I think the language they communicate with is Yiddish. Um, the Hasidic community stays very separate from the rest of the New York population. They have their own schools, their own grocery stores, their own clothing stores, their own everything, doctors. They even have their own EMTs. They have their own hospitals. They have their own everything. They stay completely separate from the rest of the city. When I lived in a neighborhood that bordered the Williamsburg Hasidic community, and I mean no disrespect for the Hasidic community. I'm just this is a completely objective point of view. I'm Christian, so I love people. When I was living in that neighborhood, if a Hasidic man and I were about to approach each other on the sidewalk, like say we're both walking down the sidewalk, and they will actually like go around you, like either cross the street or go walk in the street so they don't have to walk next to a Gentile. Like they really like avoid anyone who is Gentile. You occasionally see them on the subway, but not very often. And they mostly like have their own cars. They drive around. They just don't interact with the population that much. Yeah, my interaction with Hasidic people is very, very limited. My landlords are Hasidic in both my studio building, which is where I'm at now. I'm an artist. This is my artist studio. Sorry, it's a mess in the background. And then my landlords in my apartment building are also Hasidic. The Hasidic population owns a large part of the real estate in Brooklyn. I'm just giving you some objective facts. They don't interact much with the rest of the Gentile population in Brooklyn, in New York, or in the world in general. So, that's just like an added factor. I just wanted to throw that in there because some people might not be as aware of like what I mean when I say Hasidic Jewish community. So again, just wanted to throw that in there. To see Hasidic community worshiping alongside the Spanish-speaking church is like really cool, in my opinion. I think it's wild and amazing. So I just wanted to throw that in. I do kind of think that this was a prophecy for New York, and it might even be a prophecy that is personally relevant to me because I do know someone who I've been talking to and who has been going to church with me who is Jewish, and she hasn't quite accepted Christ yet, but I do think she will. But she's Jewish, and but although wasn't really super raised in the Jewish faith. But anyway, I digress. It's a personal thing for me. So I thought this was a really cool dream. The fact is that before this dream, I had been praying a little bit about the harvest and bringing in the harvest, and I've been praying a bit about evangelizing and speaking to my friends and colleagues in the art world about Jesus and planting seeds and like what that means. And then at what point will these people that I care about accept him, people who I've been led to pray for. And I felt that God was saying to me to pray for the season to change, to pray for the harvest season. So before this, like earlier this last week, I was praying about the harvest and about the season changing. And in particular, maybe even thinking specifically about this one friend. And then, I got this dream. And the fact that it's a cactus in a pot plant, these prickly pears are huge. They can become huge. huge plants. Like, I don't know how tall they really can get, but like definitely above human height, like 6 to 8 feet tall, maybe. Um, you typically see them spreading out in like bushes, but they spread really fast and they can become huge and like really take over an area. Um, but the fact that I had this one in a little potted plant is, it's New York City. I live in New York City, so that's I think that was what that is about. It's like this specific. It's like the prickly pear. If it's a symbol for Israel, it's like also a combination of the Spanish church and the original, our Jewish brothers and sisters coming together, united by the same Father, and hopefully bringing about like a new growth, a new. I'm hesitant to use the term revival because it's not quite the right word, but yeah, a new harvest. And a new plant, and these two branches of faith coming together. And I think it's just incredible. And yeah, the fact that I had no clue about this, about the prickly pear being a relevant plant to Israel and Spanish speaking countries. It's just super cool. And yeah, I wanted to share it. It's today is January 19th, 2024. So I think, when I first got the dream, when I was first laying there praying about this dream, uh, I really felt an immediate pressing to share it. And I haven't released a video in a while because I've been too busy, and I also didn't have a specific word about something to share. And I asked God, when do you want me to share it? And he's like, today. So here I am. And yeah, so I hope this was interesting to you. I hope it blesses you, and I hope it brings forth whatever God wants it to bring forth. This is in service to Him and Him alone. So, yeah, and if you, if you want to leave a comment, if you have any thoughts about what this might mean, or if you have any additional insight or revelation, please share it. And, likes and subscribes also always really help these videos to get out and accomplish what God wants to be accomplished. So that's my dream. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Thanks. Bye.